I don't know what it is, but I love answering all kinds of questions that are put to me. Anyone who has ever read my blog knows that whenever I find questions online aimed, in general, at me, I leap on the chance to give answers. You've seen some of that here on YouTube with my political quiz answers, and when I come across instances of religious questions or people asking religious questions to the irreligious, I'm happy to oblige. It not only lets people get to know me better, but it lets me point out some of the issues with the kinds of questions that get asked, which are often even more telling about the theist asking them than anything I could say in response. Therefore, here's a short video with just 5 short questions asked by a theist that I'm going to do my best to provide answers to. So everybody, wish me luck.
Hey guys, it's Justin with you once again. I know it's been a little while since I've made any videos or anything here on YouTube, so I figured I'd just lay out the questions and try to communicate a little bit to the atheist audience out there, the community here on YouTube. I just figured that I'd like to get into your minds a little bit more, see where you're currently at, try to understand your thought process and why it is you do not believe in God, and what has drawn you to where you're currently at.
Hey Justin, I know it's been a while since you made this video, and maybe you're still hanging around and are interested in what I have to say, and if not, then hopefully some of your religious brethren are out there and might get something out of my answers. I will have to say I'm already impressed with Justin, just because he's being polite and intelligent right off the bat. If any of you are familiar with some of the other YouTube theists I've taken on, you know that's a pretty rare quality to find, and I certainly appreciate it.
This can be for agnostics as well, but this is more specifically to the atheist community out there. So I just have 5 questions I wanted to ask, and just wanted for you guys to answer those.
And I would be more than happy to, but first I have to correct what is a common misconception. Agnostic is not, regardless of what you might have heard, some middle ground between atheist and theist. It's an entirely separate position, one that has nothing whatsoever to do with belief or disbelief in gods. See, atheism and theism, those deal with belief or lack thereof. Agnosticism and Gnosticism, those deal with claims of knowledge. Everyone is both an atheist or a theist and also an agnostic or Gnostic. Everyone. This is something lots of people get wrong, and there are plenty of atheists who self-identify as agnostics because they're uncomfortable using the proper terminology. But whether they like it or not, so long as they do not actively believe in the existence of any gods, they are, comfortable or not, atheists. But that's just a minor quibble, so let's get on with your questions.
Anyway, the first question is why are you an atheist? I'm sure that you guys have put a lot of thought, energy, and thinking behind why you do not believe in God, why you reject the belief in God. So I'm just kind of curious as to how you came about that conclusion. You don't have to give me a whole life story or anything like that. But I'm just kind of curious on that. So you can make a video. I would appreciate a video. You don't have to make a video. It doesn't really matter. You can comment or not comment. It doesn't really matter either. But it's really up to you. So that's the first question.
Well, here you go. I made a video. So I'll give you the short answer, and then I'll give you the long answer because while you might not care or even hear this, others on my channel might. So anyhow, the short answer is that I don't believe in any gods because I have not seen any objective evidence whatsoever that any gods actually exist in reality. So long as that's the case, so long as I have not been presented with that evidence, I'm not going to believe. The same goes for everything. I won't believe in leprechauns or unicorns or Bigfoot without objective evidence either. The burden of proof is solely on the positive claimant, and in this case, that's the people who believe in gods. You have failed in your burden of proof. Now for the longer story. See, I grew up as a fundamentalist Christian. I was very serious about my faith. I spent all day on Sunday, every Sunday, and all night on Wednesday at church, attending every service that the church offered. I was also very active in the church youth group, and I seriously thought I was being called to enter the ministry. I sang in the choir, I helped at the pastor, and I went to a religious high school. While lots of Christians don't want to believe it, I had every bit as much faith in God as they did. I was convinced that I had a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. There is absolutely no difference between how I felt and how fundamentalist Christians feel today. I've been there, no matter how much Christians want to believe otherwise. But while I went to a religious private school, most of my friends did not. They were still religious, they just went to public schools, and we used to get together after school to study together. While doing so, and I think this was my senior year of high school, I was taking a biology class, so I would look at their textbooks, and their textbooks talked about evolution, something I had absolutely no experience with, having gone to private religious schools all my life. It wasn't great coverage by any means, but it was coverage nonetheless. So I went to school on a Monday, and in biology class, my teacher, Dr. Hoger, asked if there were any questions. So, stupid me, I raised my hand and said, "I came across this thing called evolution. Would you please explain it?" He got all red-faced and exploded, almost screaming at me that evolution was a satanic plot, that I had better never question the Bible or my Christian beliefs, and if he ever heard me mention that word in his class again, he'd have me expelled, which, for all I knew, he could have done since his brother was the dean of discipline for the school. So I was totally floored by this, but at the same time, telling me what not to do, especially without good reason, that's never a good idea. So I decided I was going to get myself an education and find out what all the fuss was about, and I was absolutely convinced that I'd find out that my biology teacher was right all along. But the more I studied, the more I found that he wasn't right. All the evidence proved that evolution was a well-supported scientific theory, and that a lot of the creationism and Christian ideas that I had read about were just a bunch of unsupported nonsense. And if they had been wrong about this part of my religious teachings, what else was wrong? So I started studying the Bible in depth. I already knew it backwards and forwards. I could quote huge portions of the Bible from memory, and I was pretty good at apologetics. As I said before, I was part of the youth group, and a lot of what we did was going door to door, trying to engage people in the neighborhood and try to get them to come and attend our church. But the more I studied, the more holes started to appear in what I believed. I wasn't just reading the Bible to believe. I was studying it and checking it against science and history and independent observation, and found that the Bible just didn't stand up well to intellectual scrutiny. It was a long, slow process, but eventually I gave up on Christianity entirely because the claims that I had been raised with just didn't ring true when compared to reality. Over the more than 30 years since then, I have continued to study and learn and rationally examine world religions and have never found any of them to be remotely based on anything but wishful thinking and blind faith. And that's not something to be proud of.
The second question would be, do you know much about the Christian God? I know this might sound kind of weird, due to the fact that I know you guys don't believe in the Christian God. However, due to the fact you've done your research and you've studied thoroughly and the realities of life, you've come to the conclusion that where you're at that you're an atheist. However, as we all know, Christians come to know God more, as you say, intimately or more closely through the Bible, which is the testimony of how God has showed and revealed himself throughout the centuries. So how much do you know about God? Have you read the Bible front to back? Have you studied it thoroughly?
I probably know more about the Christian God than you do. Most atheists, at least in the United States, started off as Christians, mostly because that's the most common religion. The idea that we don't know what we're talking about is absurd. The fact is, Christians do not come to know God more intimately. They do not have a personal relationship with Jesus any more than Hindus have a personal relationship with Krishna. It's all a load of nonsense that you people have been indoctrinated into. But not only do I know more about Christianity than you do, I've also studied the claims of Islam, Hinduism, Shintoism, and many forms of Buddhism, and many other religions to boot, and found them all equally lacking. We know more than you. I wish you'd stop pretending otherwise.
The third question I have would be, is when you think of the Judeo-Christian God, what's the first thing that comes to mind without you having to reflect and think? If you have the first thing that comes to mind, what do you think about the Christian God?
You won't like this, but nonsense. The Christian God is nonsense. But he's not alone. There are thousands of gods that man has made up for himself to worship that are all just as nonsensical. Man is very good at making stuff up. Now that isn't our fault, I suppose. We are programmed by our biology to search for patterns and want answers, even when we haven't actually achieved them. When ancient man didn't know how the world around him worked, he invented gods and monsters to explain it, and over time, these stories got passed around and changed in the repetition. People took up the mantle of telling these stories and of being the spokesman for various and sundry gods until it became an integral part of human society. That doesn't make any of it true. It just makes it common. But in the modern world, at least in the West, these myths are finally starting to fall as more and more people are realizing that believing in imaginary friends in the sky just doesn't make any sense anymore, and it isn't necessary. We've answered most of the questions that these myths were created to answer. It's time to just deal with reality as it is, not as we've been told incorrectly that it was.
And then question number 4. Question number 4 would be, what is God's character? Who is he? What is in his nature? Who do you think he is? He's good, evil, bad, whatever. Just who is God in his character?
Isn't that something you're supposed to be telling us? I mean, I know what different groups of Christians say. You have to remember that there are more than 44,000 distinct sects of Christianity worldwide. All of them have somewhat different views on God's characteristics, his wishes, his desires, etc. I don't have to explain my views of God because I don't believe in God. You do. You explain what God is supposedly like, and more importantly, how you came to believe these things about God. How did you independently test these supposed characteristics? Did you just buy into what somebody told you, or did you actually put your beliefs to the test? And if so, how did you do that? These are important questions because, almost without exception, I find that Christians haven't got a clue how they concluded that God is omniscient or omnipotent. They can't explain why God is the source of morality or why God's moral views are actually good. You have to remember that according to the Bible, God killed many millions of people and Satan killed 10. Who's the bigger moral monster here?
And then following question number 4 is question number 5 was, how did you come to these conclusions? What makes you think that the theology of God, I guess you can say, is what you came to your conclusion? What about him made you believe that that's his character?
I came to them because I examined the claims of Christianity and found them wanting. There is no evidence supporting the claims that Christians make. The Bible cannot be validated externally. There is no independent direct eyewitness accounts for any of the claims about Jesus. Things like the flood, which absolutely would leave empirical evidence, left absolutely none. And the Bible reads more like a book of mythology than a book of history. I tried my hardest to substantiate what I believed. I was absolutely certain when I started out that I'd discover that everything I believed was absolutely true. But that's just not how it turned out. It wasn't that my faith wasn't strong enough. It was that my honesty was too strong to keep lying to myself and to those around me. Too bad so many Christians don't have that moral compass and desire to believe only what is actually true instead of just what makes them feel good.
Anyway, that's it. Nothing fancy, but I just kind of want to see what you guys think and what you believe. Anyway, guys, take it easy.
So, Justin, or anybody else who might be interested in my answers, there you go. I didn't reject Christianity because I wanted to sin. I didn't walk away because I didn't take it seriously. I didn't deconvert because I didn't understand it. I probably know more about Christianity than the majority of modern-day Christians, including most apologists. The claims made by Christians simply do not stand up to any kind of critical scrutiny. There's no objective evidence that supports these beliefs, and all of the philosophical mumbo-jumbo that gets thrown around is packed full of logical fallacies and ridiculous leaps of illogic. It doesn't matter how much you wish these things were true. There's no reason for an objective, intelligent, rational person to take them seriously at all. Maybe you ought to do what I did and check it out for yourself. Take a few steps back, open your Bible, and see what's actually in there, and if it can be defended from external sources. Ask yourself how you know what you claim to know, and if that claim of knowledge can be objectively substantiated. I'm sure if you're honest, you'll have to admit, as I came to learn, that it's all a load of nonsense, and that will put you on a path to rationality, and that's the only place anyone with half a clue ought to be. So thanks for listening. I appreciate the support that I get from my loyal followers, and I encourage everyone watching to comment, like, subscribe, and share. Let me know what you thought of my story, and if anyone else would like to share similar stories, please comment below. Until next time, be sure to think. It's a lot better than believing imaginary stories blindly.